In exemplifying points within Ruth Bader Ginsburg's life that undoubtedly changed the course of history, my team and I aim to prove the importance and impact she had on equal rights and gender equality to shape American culture and society. Ruth Bader Ginsburg influenced history in fighting against forced sterilization. In the 1970s, poor women, mostly in the South, were told that they must be sterilized in order to keep their jobs. Ginsburg argued that women should be able to make those decisions for themselves. Her early work laid the foundations for the Equal Credit Opportunity Act of 1974, giving women the ability to open bank accounts, take out credit cards in their names, and commit to mortgage without a male cosigner. Later, Ruth Bader Ginsburg advocated for Ledbetter in the Ledbetter versus Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company case in the Supreme Court in 2009. This case sparked a large path for equal pay rights, as Ledbetter claimed that at work she was both sexually harassed and paid less than her male colleagues, though it was argued that Ledbetter filed her complaint too late because she didn't file it when her first discriminatory paycheck was disbursed. This choice infuriated Ruth, as pay disparities are often much harder to identify. This all later influenced President Obama to sign the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act of 2009. Ginsburg oversaw hundreds of discrimination cases. Many of these championed women's financial rights, including the right to equal pay. The victories of the Ginsburg-led Women's Rights Project guided significant advances in the financial equality for women, and though many cases were also lost regarding wage discriminations, the influence on formulating comparable worth theories paved the way for later advancements. Ruth Bader Ginsburg's influence truly allows women to feel comfortable to stand against discrimination in the workplace without fear of losing their employment. In 1963, Ruth was working at Rutgers Law School when she became pregnant. Often women of that era would lose their jobs or go on leave due to pregnancy, since society saw it as something that would make them incapable. She successfully hid her pregnancy by wearing big clothes. She saw the injustice in her truth, and it was one of many experiences that led her to speak on pregnancy discrimination within the workforce. As the leader of the American Civil Liberties Union, Ginsburg took many cases to the Supreme Court concerning pregnancy discrimination. In 1976, she fought the case General Electric Co. v. Gilbert, where the argument to allow pregnancy to be treated like any other short-term disability was attempted to be proven as sex discrimination. After fighting that this was a violation of Title VII, the case was still lost, and pregnancy discrimination within work and education fields were not considered sex discrimination. Ginsburg continued her pursuit and created a group called the Coalition to End Discrimination Against Pregnant Workers and gathered for solutions. She also co-wrote a piece in the New York Times that better explained exactly what pregnant women were able to do and what they had to go through. It was brought up to Congress, and they were able to get the passing of the Pregnancy Discrimination Act of 1978. And the act to this day allows women to take leave toward the end of their pregnancy and supports their rights to keep their job even while pregnant. Another place where pregnancy discrimination was apparent was for women soldiers. Ginsburg fought against cases within this topic, including the non-allowance of military benefits to women for claiming their husband as dependent, unless if they needed more than half of their support, and gender discrimination for omitting women's attendance to a public military institution. In 1971, these two cases influenced progression of equality within the U.S. military. Within ACLU, Ginsburg represented Air Force Captain Susan Struck against the Department of Defense and argued against discharging women solely for their ability to get pregnant. The Equal Protection Clause eventually was used to change policies leading to the end of pregnancy discrimination within the military. Another case brought to the Supreme Court was concerning a couple battling issues obtaining their military benefits. Sharon Frontiero, a lieutenant in the Air Force that Ginsburg represented, applied for medical benefits and housing for both her and her husband. For Sharon to receive benefits and claim her husband as dependent, he would have to prove that he is dependent on more than half of her support. Ginsburg argued this was unconstitutional. In 1995, now Justice Ginsburg dealt with yet another landmark case reaching Supreme Court in the Virginia Military Institute as the only exclusively male public institution in Virginia. The United States sued against the state of Virginia, claiming that this policy was unconstitutional as it was not a private institution, so they didn't have the ability to make it male only. To try to work around any further lawsuits, Virginia created the Virginia Women's Institute for Leadership. Justice Ginsburg felt this was not the way to correct the issue and wrote for the majority, stating, quote, "The WMI program is a pale shadow of BMI in terms of the range of circular choices, faculty stature, funding, prestige, alumni support, and influence." End quote. This case has made a huge influence, fighting a law that denies full citizenship to women just because they are women. She was overall a pioneer for gender equality. She used her first-hand experiences to fuel her, to work on many cases, and began to show that gender stereotypes were affecting both men and women. She taught a women's liberation class in 1971, and partnering with ACLU, she drafted briefs as a part of the course for two federal cases. Firstly was a federal tax code denying family caregiving single men tax deductions. Secondly was a state law preferring men to women in administering the property of those who die without a will. The second one was the first gender-based statute denied on the basis of the Equal Protection Clause. In early use of including arguing a case on behalf of a male plaintiff, she made a point that gender stereotypes can negatively impact women and men. By using discrimination against male plaintiffs as a tactic to get sympathy from the 9 male judges and challenging that men were obviously being favored, she opened the gate to challenge many flaws within our legal system in a very smart way. Impactful to gender discrimination today, she also won 5 of 6 cases argued before the Supreme Court, founded the Women's Rights Project, and wrote dozens of law review articles. So with our country being so big and our states having their own separate regulations, the push to near absolute equality in the United States will always be a slow battle. Today, Ginsburg overall helped state-funded schools to admit women, helped women have the right to financial independence and equal benefits, helped give men the same social security and caregiving rights as women, helped women to be a part of juries, and much more. Through using the most boiled down point that profit on discrimination does not lead to progression, we are able to continue to change social norms to fit the needs of humanity by being inclusive and innovative within our growth as a society because of the ability to be a part of a conversation that we were previously excluded from. With our culture now able to reshape discriminatory ideologies and our society changed to benefit one another greatly, we will continue to use the tools Ruth Bader Ginsburg gave us to give liberty and justice for all.